Watch out." At that moment, when my wife shouted, a truck burst out of the opposite lane right in front of us. After I screamed, we were blown away in the car we were riding in. I felt a strong impact on my body, and at the same time a severe pain. Then my consciousness began to fade. After a while, I heard a beeping sound near my ear and realized it was something like an alarm clock ringing. It was a terrible dream, and I woke up feeling unsettled, starting the day with a bad feeling. It was a gloomy morning. My name's Mike, I'm 35. I've always been a heavy sleeper, hardly able to wake up even when the alarm goes off. When I slowly opened my eyes to turn off the alarm, I saw a plain, unfamiliar ceiling. Huh? The ceiling of my house is supposed to be wood-paneled, but this isn't my home. I tried to get up in a hurry, but for some reason, I couldn't move my body as if I was paralyzed. Confused, an unknown woman spoke to me. "Mike, can you hear me?" I managed to nod faintly and blink, and the woman smiled with relief and then said, "Doctor." Mike's regained consciousness and went to call for the doctor. Could it be that she was a nurse? Turning towards where the sound was coming from, the beeping was the sound of an ECG. As I tried to clear my foggy, just awakened mind, a doctor in a white coat came and started touching various parts of my body while asking questions. "Do you feel me touching here?" When I managed to nod, he told me about how the car I was in had flipped over in a major accident, and that I had been unconscious for 2 weeks since being brought to the hospital by an ambulance. It wasn't just a dream. While I was in shock, the doctor kept talking. "You were lucky. Given the severity of the accident, there's no paralysis other than a broken leg. Rehab will be tough, but you've got to hang in there." I was worried about my wife and wanted to ask about her, but my voice was hoarse and wouldn't come out. The doctor, seeing my struggle, assured me that he would contact my family soon. It seemed he understood what I wanted to say. Unable to move freely, I had to wait anxiously in bed for my wife, Emily, to come. Soon after, I started rehab as my condition allowed. As the doctor said, after lying down for 2 weeks, my body felt heavy, and it was very hard to move freely. Getting up was out of the question. I never imagined something like this would happen. After rehab, as I dozed off from exhaustion, my mom rushed into the room, held my hand, and cried with relief that I was awake. But I couldn't see Emily. When I asked where she was with all the strength I could muster, my mom told me she had been taken to another hospital. When I asked about her condition, I was told it wasn't anything serious, which eased some of the anxiety that had been clouding my mind. Breathing a sigh of relief, I deeply realized just how much I can't live without my wife. I wanted to hear her voice right away, but our phones were broken in the accident and unusable. It was frustrating not to be able to call Emily's hospital directly. And my mom told me that focusing on rehab to get moving as soon as possible was a priority. I was worried about Emily, but if she was in the same condition, she wouldn't be able to call. But still, I can't help but worry. The only way I can see my wife is to get moving again and visit Emily at the hospital where she's admitted. With that resolve, I pushed through rehab with the help of the therapists, desperate to get better. Thanks to all the hard work in rehab, I gradually started to be able to sit up and eventually could move myself to a wheelchair on my own. Mom bought me a new cell phone, and I tried calling Emily, but it didn't go through. Maybe she hasn't gotten a new phone yet. Mom said her injuries weren't serious, but what if she's hiding the fact that Emily's really badly hurt from me? When I pressed Mom for the truth, sure enough, she turned her face away. I don't want to think this, but Emily hasn't passed away, has she? I begged Mom to tell me the truth, and, furrowing her brows, she sat down on the chair next to my hospital bed and dropped a bombshell after telling me to calm down and listen. Emily's injury wasn't serious. She's already been discharged from the hospital, she said. But, well, she wants a divorce. She sent the divorce papers over. Looking at the divorce form handed to me by Mom, Emily's name was indeed written in her handwriting. This can't be happening. It's impossible. I can't understand why, and when I try calling her to ask for a reason, even if the phone is broken, it should at least ring, but it doesn't even do that. While I was holding my head in despair, Mom looked at me with a pained expression and said that Emily had apparently been considering leaving me for a while. But I never noticed any signs of that before. I don't know what's going on. Holding the shaking divorce papers in my hand, Mom said that since I couldn't get in touch with Emily, I might as well fill them out and send them in. At this point, I have to get better enough to go see her in person. With the sole intention of seeing my wife, I rehabbed not just in the rehab room, but also at my bedside, and 2 months later, I could walk on my own and was finally discharged. Returning home after a long time, I was confronted with the fact that all of Emily's things were gone, which made me collapse onto the floor in despair. I felt so pathetic and miserable. But I can't be satisfied without talking to her directly, so thinking the only place she could be was at my in-laws, I rushed there right away, hoping that Emily still had some feelings for me. Wishing that she would tell me she doesn't want a divorce, I sped off in a taxi. When I arrived at my in-laws and rang the doorbell, my mother-in-law answered the intercom. "It's been a while, it's Mike. Emily's there, right? I really need to speak with her, so I came over." To my surprise, she sounded shocked and said Emily wasn't there. And without even letting me in the house, she told me that they also agreed with the divorce and asked me never to come back, and after that, just like with Emily, I couldn't get through to the in-laws' house either. For a while, I waited for a call from Emily while staring at the divorce papers, but realizing she no longer had any feelings for me, I had no choice but to submit them. If it weren't for that accident, we would still be a happily married couple. No, but Mom said Emily had been thinking of divorce for a while. Maybe I just never noticed how she felt, even after all these years living together. Losing my wife makes everything seem gray. Her bright smile and laughter keep coming and going in my mind. Will I never see her carefree smile or have a casual chat with her again? My dream was to grow old with my wife at a leisurely pace, but it's been cruelly dashed. Dream can be fragile sometimes. With a heavy heart, I went back to work, starting part-time and gradually increasing to my normal workload. Half a year after separating from the love of my life, I worked desperately without distraction to cut off my feelings for her. Then, on a day when I got used to living alone, I finished work early but didn't want to go back to an empty house, so I decided to go to the last stop without getting off at my usual station. It took over an hour from my house, and it was my first time getting off at this station. Since I had nothing to do at home anyway, I thought I might as well have a drink before going back. While looking for a calm place to drink, I saw something that shocked me. As I walked past the park's parking lot, there was Emily, arm in arm, looking cozy with an unfamiliar man. To see her like this, in such a place, being affectionate, was the reason she wanted to leave me because she was having an affair. Stunned by the shock, Emily, of all things, started to hug the man. I turned away on impulse, and as I heard the sound of a car engine. By the time I looked back, Emily had left somewhere in her boyfriend's car. As I watched the car shrink into the distance, I was tormented by a sense of solitude. Left behind alone in this unfamiliar place. My chest hurts. Seeing my wife's infidelity has left my heart in turmoil. Maybe I should have spoke to her. But we're divorced now, and doing so would probably just be a bother to her. I've lost the energy to look for a bar, and all I see is the asphalt sidewalk and the small flowers struggling to bloom on it. Their resilience makes me want to cry. Pretending to wipe sweat, I use my handkerchief to dry my tears, and I spend the whole train ride home looking down. Before I know it, it starts to rain, and drops patter against the window. When I arrive at my usual station, the rain pours down as if to reflect my mood. Feeling like crying, I walk home in the rain without an umbrella, getting soaked to the skin. I wish I could disappear with this rain. I don't want to go back to that dark house. But as I walk, I see lights on at my place. I couldn't help but quicken my pace. My pace quickens, thinking maybe, just maybe, Emily has come back. I hurry to unlock the door, and as I step in, I'm greeted by the smell of delicious cooking. As I call out I'm home and open the entrance, I hear the sound of footsteps rushing towards me. Oh dear, you're soaked. Didn't you have an umbrella? Go take a bath quickly. It wasn't Emily, but my mother who came over to cook. Worried by my obvious disappointment, she asks if I'm okay, and I tell her honestly that I saw Emily today. Suddenly, my mom went into another room to make a call, then came back with unexpected advice. Go back to where you saw Emily tomorrow. I ask why, but mom only says, I'll understand if I go. She tells me to see for myself, but is she implying that I need to face reality? However, what really caught my attention was the unusually serious look in mom's eyes after she hung up the phone. Reluctant but having the next day off, I went to the park at the same time I saw Emily. And there they are, Emily and the man from yesterday. Today, I'm going to talk to them. If it doesn't work out, I'll put an end to my feelings. As I watch the two, they head back to the parking lot. I rushed over, and something was off. Emily in a wheelchair. I thought her injuries were minor. As Emily caught my gaze, she put her hand to her mouth and gasped in shock. Why, how, Mike, what are you doing here? Hearing those words, the man with her also expressed his surprise in much the same way. Mike, no way, you didn't follow us, did you? They probably didn't expect to run into me at a park over an hour away by train from my home. I noticed no scars on the left side of Emily's face that I saw yesterday, but now I see a large one on the right. She looked down quickly, her hair covering the scar and a pained expression on her face, and as she tries to get into the car and stumbles, I see the same scene from yesterday. They weren't hugging. Emily was stumbling into the car and the man was helping her. I asked them to explain, but Emily stayed silent, her face downcast. So I asked the man about his relationship with Emily, and he confessed everything. After the big accident, Emily sustained spinal cord damage and became paralyzed from the waist down, slowly coming to grips with the fact that she'll never be able to part with her wheelchair. And she's left with a large scar on her face. Indeed, she was more severely injured than me, which is why she was taken to a different hospital. After hearing I regained consciousness, Emily was relieved but felt she couldn't burden me and decided on a divorce. She was advised against it by my mother, but her decision was firm. I told Emily that I wouldn't have wanted a divorce if I'd known all this, and she finally spoke, sharing her feelings. I was driving when we had the accident. I can face you, I feel so guilty. I don't want to be your burden, so find someone worthy of you and enjoy your life. She conveyed in a whisper thin as a thread, revealing the depths of her struggle. I couldn't bear to think of her pain. The man accompanying her was Emily's cousin, John. Emily explained that John, who is a rehab therapist, helps her with walking exercises outside of her regular hospital sessions. But I just can't walk, she admitted, a look of utter defeat crossing her face as she slapped her unmoving legs. Could it have been Emily my mom was calling? When I asked, Emily said she hadn't received a call, but her mother had last night. The timing matched, and it must have been our parents talking. They probably hoped we would get back together. I still love Emily, I told her, unaffected by her paralysis or the scars, but she didn't nod in agreement. I decided to wait for as long as it takes for Emily to change her mind and asked John to let me take over her rehab. After some initial hesitation, she began to see improvements from her sessions. Today, she stood up for a few seconds. You did it, Emily. Her smile brought back memories of our time as husband and wife. It was now or never. With all the courage I could muster, I laid bare my feelings. Emily, marry me again. If you're smiling beside me, that's all I need for happiness. Marry me. Think of it as saving me, please. Her hand in mine. Her warm tears fell. This warmth is nostalgic. Are you sure I'm enough? She asked. It has to be Emily, I replied and hugged her tight. Amidst sobs, Emily accepted my proposal. She must have wanted to cry for so long. We'll share our sorrows from now on, Emily. Our gray life had ended, and my life began to shine with rosy hues. We went straight to Emily's parents to get their blessing for our second marriage, and her mother said it was just as she planned. Indeed, it was Emily's mother my mom had called. The cupids of our love story were our mothers, a slightly surreal thought, but I was only grateful. My gloomy feelings cleared, leaving me feeling as fresh as a clear blue sky. Emily shared my feelings and smiled. Our parents approved of the remarriage, so everything progressed smoothly. After submitting our marriage registration, I took some time before inviting my wife back home. I made our home wheelchair accessible for her comfort before Emily returned. The happy days I spend with my wife are incredibly precious to me. Then, I searched far and wide for a doctor who could treat the scar on her face, and we successfully scheduled the surgery. Hearing that the scar would be much less noticeable, Emily was overjoyed. I vowed to not only heal the scar on her face but also the scars on her heart, promising to protect Emily for a lifetime.